Joining us, Republican Congressman Rich McCormick. He sits on the House Armed Services Committee. What do you make, Congressman, first of all, of what Congressman Jim Himes just said about the Trump administration and its inability to keep these very sensitive, classified details about an upcoming U.S. military strike against the Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen?
Well, as a former military member for over 20 years, somebody who's had top secret clearance, somebody who understands people like Mike Waltz, who have served in the military, understand exactly what's at stake, understands exactly how to keep these things classified. It was a mistake. Nobody's denying that. I listened to Mike Waltz very specifically in his interviews last night. He had several. And listened to his verbiage. Of course it's embarrassing. Of course we did something wrong. I don't think it'll ever happen again. I sure hope not. It does jeopardize people's lives. Luckily it didn't in this case result in something bad. The admission that there was something done wrong, the fact that we're going to do something better in the future, I think is the important thing. I don't think we should be talking about anything else. You could talk about other people doing other things. That doesn't matter. As a military guy, as somebody who wants to see something accomplished in the safest way possible, that's something that shouldn't be done, and I think we won't do it again.
A U.S. defense official is telling CNN, Congressman, that this information was classified at the time it was written, since the operation had not yet started, and it provided details about what was about to happen with the U.S. military in Yemen going after those Iranian-backed Houthi forces. How much worse does it make the administration look now that these details have just been made public by the Atlantic magazine?
So when we say something's classified, it's something usually that the military intelligence or whoever's in charge of that information is the ones who designate if it's classified or not. Now, whether it's classified or not, we know that it was sensitive information. We know it shouldn't have been shared. It was a mistake. But whether it was illegal, it certainly wasn't done intentionally, but whether it was illegal because it was classified information, that's something that's going to be determined by people who are in the legalese of that. But once again, nobody says that it wasn't done wrong. Nobody says that it couldn't have jeopardized the mission. But whether it was illegal or not is something entirely different.
The National Security Advisor over at the White House, Mike Waltz, a man you know, said he takes full responsibility for creating the group chat. And is now downplaying these latest messages released by the Atlantic magazine, saying, and I'm quoting him now, "No locations, no sources and methods, no war plans." Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is also denying that he texted war plans. If these messages aren't war plans, though, what are they? I assume you read all the text messages.
I have not read all the text messages. I don't think they've been released. All
they have been.
Content.
All of them have been released by the Atlantic magazine this morning.
Okay, I have not read this morning. I've been in meetings all morning, but I have not read it. So it'll be interesting to see what details come from that.
The details show the type of weapons that were about to be used in this strike. The details showed the timing of when the strikes were to begin, and the details showed specific targets, including Houthi leaders, one of whom they were told was about to walk into a building where he had a girlfriend, and that building was destroyed. Presumably the girlfriend was killed in the process. What do you make of those kind of specific details discussed on a private signal chat focus over there?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what they come up with in the future. Obviously, this is something that people have been doing in defense. I don't think it's good. I think it needs to be in a skiff where you have literally walls and you don't have your cell phones because of this sort of problem. I think they'll do a top-down review of how they do business and make sure that this is not done again. I think it's something you can learn from. You admit your mistakes. That's the first step towards correcting them.
The newly released texts show very, very sensitive information. I'm a former Pentagon correspondent, former White House correspondent, and if other officials at the Pentagon or the White House or other U.S. intelligence agencies in the CIA, the DIA or whatever, were releasing this kind of information in advance of an upcoming U.S. military airstrike, they would be kicked out immediately, if not sent to jail for a long time. You agree?
Oh, hey, when I was in the military, we still can't talk about things that we never even did, just things we planned. That's from 20 years ago. But quite frankly, we've seen a lot of people not get in trouble, including former secretaries of state, and you know who I'm talking about, for doing things that they shouldn't have done. Accountability is something we start with, and it shouldn't be just the lower enlisted levels that get in trouble for doing these sort of things. There should be accountability. I'm sure they're going to do a review. The mistakes were already admitted. They're going to correct the problem, and I'm sure there will be accountability in some way, shape, or form.
Well, you think the FBI should investigate?
I think they are investigating.
Well, we haven't gotten word yet. There's no indication that they have launched a formal, full-scale investigation into this intelligence failure.
Well, whether it's the FBI or the President of the United States, this is going to be reviewed, no doubt about it. We're going to learn from it and hopefully do better.
And potentially crimes were committed in the process of releasing this kind of information in some sort of commercial signal chat capability.
Yeah, potentially. But that's one thing that has to be reviewed, doesn't it?
Presumably it will be reviewed. I assume it will be reviewed. Normally, if this kind of intelligence before an upcoming U.S. military airstrike were made public, and in this particular case it was made public, there would be a full-scale intelligence review and a full-scale potential criminal review as well to see what happened, to learn the lessons of what happened and make sure it never happens again. A full-scale review. Should Congress begin a full-scale review as well?
Well, that's what the hearings are about. Think about this, Wolf. This is already one of the most public stories we've had during this administration. It's not even about the story that we actually took out some bad guys, that we actually did a mission. I haven't been able to read any details on that because the entire press cycle has been on this. There's going to be accountability because we know the public's aware of it. We're having hearings on it already just days after this event. So this is going to be reviewed in great detail by a great number of people and a great deal of agencies. So you don't have to worry about that.
Because we covered all those developments. Clearly you weren't watching us, but all those other developments, we've been covering them in full detail. And I'm just wondering if you expect, for example, the Defense Secretary Hegseth or the National Security Advisor Walls to resign for their carelessness in participating in this kind of chat.
No, I don't think they will resign, and I don't think it was one of those things, once again, it was done unintentionally. People make mistakes all the time. When I was in the military, we talked about a zero-defect mentality. If you punish people for mistakes, people will never take a chance. And in the military, that can be deadly as well.
But in this particular case, these were not just average U.S. military personnel. This was the leader of the Defense Department. You would think that the Pentagon leader would have full knowledge of what should be said in this kind of chat on Signal and would know, you know, guys, we shouldn't be talking about this on our personal phones, on even our government phones in this kind of environment, because potentially the Russians or the Chinese or the Iranians or others could be paying attention and listening to what's going on and undermining U.S. national security and potentially endangering the lives of the men and women who risk their lives to make sure the U.S. is secure.
You're absolutely right, Wolf, and that's why I said there was a mistake made and it will be reviewed. But one thing we're forgetting, once again, the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, had an unsecured server that she put a ton of emails on. And this isn't just one isolated incident. It's over a course of months, thousands of emails. And then when subpoenaed, what happened? They destroyed all the evidence. They smashed servers, and nobody wants to talk about that. That was a mistake too. We should always address mistakes. We should always be accountable, and that's what's going to happen.
But you don't think at this point there's enough evidence right now already out to convince the Secretary of Defense or the National Security Advisor it's time to go?
No, I think it needs to be reviewed much more in detail. I think this is going to be an ongoing discussion. Obviously, it's highlighted right now. It's the story of the day. But there is a lot of information to uncover before we make any huge jumps to conclusions.
Yeah, this is a really, really dramatic development, potentially very, very significant for the U.S. intelligence community and the U.S. military. Congressman Rich McCormick, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely.